Hi, am I coming through? Hi, everyone. I want to open by saying there are a couple of things wrong with the situation we find ourselves in now. The first is that I don't know anything about market research. The second is that this is my first conference, and so I should really be sitting where you are, not standing up here. But having said that, I think there's still something that I'd like to share with you. I'm going to be talking to you today about automation and what that means for market research in the 21st century. Roughly, and to give you an overview where we're going, I want to talk about the current market research industry and where the money goes. I want to talk to you about the Zappi proposition, what's required for real automation, and then finally, you selling your customers what they actually bought in the first place. So a little bit about me. I'm the CTO of ZappiStore. ZappiStore won the Insight Innovation Award last year, and so we're back to kind of tell you a little bit what's happened with the company. I'm also the co-founder of IIeX Software, and IIeX Software is the technology that powers, well, our product Insight Out is the technology that powers the reporting side of Zappi, and we also have experience working with some of the large market research firms in the industry. I think the real reasons that you should listen to me is that I have no experience in market research, and I've arrived with a fresh perspective. I've been watching the industry with interest over the course of the last 3 years. I think there's a lot that can be improved, and it's been really interesting to watch and learn by doing that. But most importantly, I don't think you're making as much money as you should be, and I think that's a real reason to listen. So my vision is one where you essentially let machines do all the work they can, and you have time to think. And that's something that, listening to some of the talks over the course of the last day and a half, has been a recurring theme, that there's just not the time to really think about what the value add for your customer is. So I'm going to start with a figure. This figure of 12% is the current EBITDA of the 4 major market research firms. And I've taken this data from the SMR report from last year. I took an average of the values that I could find for any of the top 10 that divulged this information. And EBITDA, for those who don't know, stands for earnings before income, tax, depreciation, and amortization. And that's essentially a measure of profitability without taking into account some of the ways that a business is financed and structured. Just to contrast that, 14.7% is the current all-industry EBITDA. So if you take the EBITDA score across all industries, including the likes of retail, where you're putting things through shelves at very low margins often, and it beats market research. Looking at the information industry or services industry in general, which was the closest industry that I could find that I thought mimicked market research, or at least in terms of the way you add value, 27.8%, so more than double what market research makes. Remember that that figure of 12% is your profitability. It's not the margin of the business in the end, so it's even lower than that. So to kind of lay out why I think this is a problem, I'm going to use a graph. On the y-axis, I'm going to represent value or profit. Now, I'm making the possibly naive assumption that the two are the same thing. When you add value for the client, you should have the right to make some profit on that. Okay? And on the x-axis, we're going to look at time. Now, this particular chart is for the current industry, and so time is very definitely measured in days, maybe weeks. So you design study. I've been listening with all ears over the course of the last day, and I'm amazed at the amount of thought that goes into how you design the right study, how you put the how you engage with your respondents, gamification, all that kind of thing. There's a lot of thinking going on there. That creates value. You then collect the data, and again, engaging respondents, finding ways to virtual reality, various different things to create true and accurate data is definitely a creator of value. SurveyMonkey, to give you an example, just works in that area, and their EBITDA is 53.9%. So there's definitely profit being made there. But then you enter your market research production pipeline. You start cleaning the data, no value added to the customer. You eat into some of your profits. You then create tables. These might be charts, they might be visualizations. We've just been looking at infographics. But essentially, you're looking at data and trying to find a story for your client. You make a mistake, and you have to go back to get some more tables. The client asks a slightly different question. You eat into your profit some more. And then you fiddle with the PowerPoint. And I have spent umpteen hours until 2 this morning fiddling with this PowerPoint, so I don't do that very often, but now I know where that time goes. It's a massive time sink. And then, at the end of this process, you're ready to deliver something to the client, but time has moved on, and you're now concerned about the margin on your project, and you need to try and get something through the door, so you put down your deck, stand in front of them, say this is what the numbers are, and leave. Looking at this from the internal process, and I appreciate the small firms are not going to all be like this, but looking at the big firms, you've got segment, you've got specialization, you've got people who process data, people who do graphics, stats modelers, researchers. They all work together. There's automation within each of these sections, Excel macros, etc. But because of the interrelationship between the different points, and this is summed up in a quote, which I unfortunately don't have the from one of a researcher, one of the large market research firms. Every time a researcher waits on another team, you lose some productivity. So what is the ZappiStore proposition? Essentially, we're an app store for the purchase of market research, but we're aiming to deliver 5% of the cost, 5% of the time, and get you 80% of the way there. Just to very quickly take you through the concept for those of you who don't know ZappiStore, this is what the ZappiStore homepage looks like, and essentially what you do is you pick a market research product that's relevant to you, so it's the best thinking in market research, it's not DIY. You pick the sample that you want, and the cost is affected by the sample, and you get an immediate estimate for the amount of time that study is going to take, and it's measured in hours. And then you upload the assets. So all the questionnaire design has been done for you. You just need to populate that particular study with the assets you wanted to test. So looking at that graph and how that applies to the ZappiStore model, and bear in mind this is now measured in hours, we have the study design. We get to put a lot of effort into the study design because we're designing the study once, so it uses kind of cutting-edge thinking in terms of how you engage respondents, etc. Do the data collection, again, make some money there. And then we deliver to the client analysis, headline, insights, and the story behind the data automatically. I won't go into the detail, but I can tell you that that is profitable. Just again, to give you a very quick overview of the kinds of things, this is the video test application on Zappi. These applications are in-house applications, so it's like an own brand for a store. We've got the ability to capture and display heat maps, etc. Let's move quickly through these. But the one that I want to dig into is a product that was launched by TNS on ZappiStore, which is the conversion model. It's TNS's premier brand equity measurement tool. And this is the kind of chart that gets produced by a TNS study. This is the equity signature chart, and it's showing, in this case, Apple or the iPhone's market share and their current customer base. Clicking on the little analysis button in the top there produces a written textual analysis of this. And I want to draw your attention to the paragraph that reads this. The net effect of all these factors suggests that Apple iPhone's core strategy needs to be defensive. So we're taking the numbers on that chart and we're delivering to the client. And bear in mind, no human has got involved with this process at all. The fact that the core strategy that Apple needs to think about is a defensive marketing strategy. Now, I've bounced this kind of analytics off various people within the industry, and I had a very interesting comment from a very well-respected and experienced market researcher. who said in his experience dealing with this product, very few times did the exec make that analytical leap from these are the numbers on the chart to this is what you should be thinking about. The reason that this is a good analysis is that this analysis is written by Dr. Jan Hafmeyer, who developed the conversion model. So he has spent years thinking about how you interpret this data and what you do with it. The point is that this can be done entirely automatically and is done entirely automatically within ZappiStore. So is it working? We think so. We're getting sales to a number of the big existing brands, a client-led drive into multiple different territories, and some key partners coming on board. Now, if I was talking a week from now, that list would be longer. There's some really exciting stuff in the pipeline in terms of well-known products coming onto the store. So what's required to achieve this kind of automation? Well, in my opinion, it's this. You need the data, and the data collection part of ZappiStore is automatic. But it's what you do with the data next that becomes really important. You have to integrate your ability to produce information from this data completely. That involves modeling. So in the case of something like conversion model, you've got complex and proprietary algorithms that are used to develop the measures that conversion model is known for. You need charting. We've just been discussing infographics. Charting is an important way of telling a story. You need some visuals. You need to be able to model. You can't often get the kind of story, driver analysis, etc., without applying statistics. So you need the ability to integrate statistical modeling into your output. And then you need to apply the analysis of experienced researchers. You need to have the best thinking for that particular product embedded with the automation process. And that essentially is like having that expert sitting and delivering every report. That allows you to produce intelligent outputs. And that can go to the researcher, or in the case of ZappiStore, directly to the client. So what does this mean for the market research industry where there is a full service model? We've said we go 80% of the way there with ZappiStore. I think you've obviously got the study design and the data collection steps, which you can still do profitably. You then need to continue with your automation process to the point where you are delivering the analysis, headlines, and the story behind the data automatically. At this point, you're hours into the process with automated data collection. It might be a bit longer if you've had to go to field. But this gives you all the rest of your project time to talk to the client about what to do next. And that's where the difference from full service and a company like ZappiStore should come in. So in summary, I just want to play this back to you in a slightly different way, and I've nicked a visual that was provided by a client of ours. Essentially, this bar represents the customer's engagement with the market researcher. They are buying something. It obviously involves some time at some cost. At the beginning of this process is very definitely what's the problem, understanding the client's need, understanding what it is they're trying to solve. And at the end, there's definitely the what next. What the market research firms seem to be so focused on is the data stuff, the stuff that goes from the problem to the solution. And I think what this approach to automation does is shrink that so that the data automation, which the client is not interested in, sorry, I beg your pardon, the data processing the client is not interested in, goes away, and you're actually able to sell what the customer thought they were buying in the first place. Thanks very much.